Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada for Reason to Resist on June 24th, 2025. Earlier this month, thousands of activists arrived in Cairo, Egypt on a mission to march to the border between Gaza and Egypt. Their objective was to demand an end to Israel's blockade on Gaza and the delivery of humanitarian aid to the starving Palestinian population of the besieged enclave. This mission, which was called the Global March to Gaza, brought together activists from over 40 countries, including the US, European nations, Canada, and North African states. But as the convoy advanced toward Egypt's eastern frontier, it was met with a harsh response by the Egyptian authorities. Dozens of foreign activists were detained upon arrival in Cairo, questioned at airports, and in many cases, deported before the march could even begin. To explore what happened in Egypt, we're joined today by Dr. Yipeng Ge. Dr. Ge is a medical doctor based in Ottawa, Canada. During Israel's genocidal assault on the Gaza Strip, he spent several weeks in medical facilities in Gaza treating wounded and ailing civilians. Zionists in Canada have attacked Dr. Ge for his passionate defense of the Palestinian cause, but admirably, he has stood his ground. And in his latest demonstration of solidarity with Palestinians, he traveled to Egypt as part of the Global March to Gaza. He joins us today from Dr. Ge.
Thanks for having me.
So could you begin by telling us where you joined this mission, geographically speaking, and what you witnessed upon your, in your first day or so of having joined the mission?
Yeah, of course. So I live and I work on unceded traditional Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, also known as Ottawa, Canada, the nation's capital. And from there, along with quite a few others from Ottawa, actually, and the rest of the country, we flew from different parts of Canada to Cairo, Egypt, to attempt to walk peacefully, march peacefully to the Rafah border crossing. The plan was to gather in Cairo, Egypt as a group of around 4,000 people of conscious, of volunteers, activists from all over the world who simply want to see an end to Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, who want to see aid be let in, the thousands of trucks at the Rafah border crossing that can simply be let in to end a famine, starvation that has plagued the entire Gaza Strip, and also demand that the bombs stop dropping, which continue to drop, and gunshot wounds and fire continue to affect people who are just trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is simply not an appropriate way to deliver dignified food aid through existing kind of humanitarian principles and channels and practices. So there were around 4,000 of us from all over the world, around 80 countries. From Canada alone, there were around 100 of us. And we descended upon Cairo, Egypt. And what we found upon entry was around 200 people already faced arrests, detainment, and deportation at the airport alone. And for those that made it through, people experienced arrests and faced deportation and confiscation of their passports from staying at some of the hotels in the downtown area. And we attempted to gather at a place called Ismailia, which is not in the Egyptian Sinai, which does not require Egyptian prior approval. And for a matter of fact, the organizers for the Global March to Gaza were very transparent about their motivations, about their movement, and actually about communicating this to the Egyptian government through many different meetings around the world with ambassadors and embassies, consulates, that kind of thing. And we did this in Canada as well. Despite all those conversations, the group, the convoy, essentially, we were stopped at multiple checkpoints between Cairo and Ismailia. There were approximately 300 people stopped at the first checkpoint, and approximately 1,000 stopped at the second checkpoint. That's where I was stopped with others. Passports confiscated, held for upwards of 5 to 7 hours. Some people did not receive their passports back. And there was also violence by the police and by other agitators to break the crowd up, to force people back to Cairo, and to not show the people power of all these people that came to Cairo in solidarity with the Palestinian people to demand that aid be let in. Simple things like food, water, fuel, medicines, baby formula, that these things simply be let in. And that, unfortunately, still to this day has not happened. And I think there's a lot of lessons from this group, the Global March to Gaza, to think about how to continue mobilizing and organizing, because this was a significant feat, although we were unsuccessful in marching to the Rafah border and demonstrating at the Rafah border to put international pressure on breaking the siege, on breaking that blockade. There's efforts already underway to look at multiple upcoming freedom flotillas, as well as looking at the direction of the Samud convoy, the Tunisian Samud convoy, that attempted to break the siege also by land, by traveling from Tunisia through Libya. They're stopped in eastern Libya by an administration that has very close ties to Israel and the US. And so for these reasons, we see how Zionism and the Zionist borders are actually much farther out than the Rafah border itself. And I think these are important lessons for all of us in thinking how complicit the parties and states are around the Gaza Strip, around occupied Palestine, that allow for genocide to happen, because genocide is most certainly not happening within a vacuum and is not happening alone because of Israel's actions, but there is a system that allows for genocide and famine to continue to this day.
So did the authorities at the airport give reasons for why they were deporting some of these activists? And if so, what kinds of reasons did they give?
I mean, to my understanding, there were no clear reasons given. I had a colleague and friend that spoke Arabic and was picked up in Ismailia. They actually made it all the way there and rounded up by police. Some were picked up from cafes, some were picked up from their Ubers, their cars on their way to a hotel. And he asked the police, like, why are you doing this? Like, what have we done wrong? What laws have we broken? And essentially the police replied saying, you've done nothing wrong. We're just following orders. Right. And when we were also attempting to cross the multiple checkpoints, and at checkpoint 2, what we were told by our taxi driver is that the Egyptian government is trying to not let bad people through these checkpoints to get to Ismailia. So there was a narrative being painted by the Egyptian government through its own propaganda channels, through its state media, to say that these people, myself included, like who were coming to bring attention to the Rafah border crossing and the need to let aid in, that there were other ulterior motives, like destabilizing the Egyptian regime and current government, for example. And I think for that reason, out of that framing of security for national security, they really clamped down and did not want to see any kind of demonstration, any kind of group gathering take place. And so they actually just really targeted and profiled anyone that looked like they might be part of the march, which really just boiled down to anyone that looks like a foreigner and has gear that looks like they're about to go camp at the Rafah border crossing. So one of the things that people were being flagged at the airport for was having a sleeping bag. And a lot of these people that actually I saw as I passed through the airport being held for secondary questioning and detainment you could tell that they all looked a certain way, with backpacking bags, with sleeping bags. They were all being picked out of the crowd for this kind of profile, I guess, that the border agents were already prepared to kind of pull people out of. And the same thing happened in downtown Cairo, in the hotels where people stayed at. There were people that were not part of the march, but were just foreigners touring Cairo to see the pyramids, and they got caught up in this as well. So it was quite a chaotic mess. And once again, there were also people that did not receive their passports back after being confiscated at different points, including at the checkpoints, and had to require a lot of embassy and consulate support to be able to travel back to their home countries. In fact, we still are unaware of the whereabouts of some delegates, so they might still be detained with passports confiscated. We've even been in touch with some folks, not from Canada is my understanding, but other delegations. And so there's quite a bit of worry around the whereabouts of some of these individuals who signed up to be a part of the march and are still missing, actually.
So you mentioned agitators. Could you tell us more about that? Are these were people in civilian clothing who were obstructing the march? And if so, how were they obstructing the march? What did they do and say to get in the way of this mission?
So what happened at checkpoint 2, where approximately 1,000 people were stopped at its peak, because passports were confiscated for most people at this checkpoint, and there was absolutely no system to process these passports. They were just strewn all over the ground, and they didn't really know how to process these passports. There would be points in time throughout that day when the sun was still up, where people would chant, free, free Palestine, and there was a lot of camaraderie around the people stuck at this checkpoint. But as the day progressed and some people left because they got their passports back, because their taxi driver was still with them, for example, which was the case for myself and my friend, we actually went back to Cairo before the sunset. But then when the evening kind of came in, the plan for those that did choose to stay at the checkpoint, also because their transportation kind of left them, they had no other choice than to essentially want to camp at the checkpoint. And when that happened, when the sun set, there were agitators that essentially came, and there were reports that these are paid agitators by the Egyptian government to essentially move the work of brutalizing people away from the police and onto these paid agitators who went into the crowd, like hit people, kicked people. There are really awful stories of people getting injured by these agitators, and also later by police, as they really wanted to break the crowd up and put them on buses so that they could be bussed back to Cairo, which is what happened to most people. Some people were deported straight to the airport. Some people had all these different experiences of having their passports taken, not given back, having their passports taken and given back after 10, 12 hours. People were stranded at the airport without their passports. And so all of this happened over the course of that one day of attempting to try to move from Cairo to Ismailia. But these paid agitators, I think were really meant to wreak havoc on a very peaceful gathering of international volunteers and activists who wanted to express their solidarity with the Palestinian people as they were experiencing genocide. I think there were some interesting firsthand accounts where there were Egyptian police that were uncomfortable with the sighting as well. Like a video I remember of an Egyptian officer at the airport who was in tears and crying because of the actions of deporting activists who didn't even make it out of the airport, and they were deported back en masse. There was reports of an Egyptian police officer who was visibly uncomfortable with the way that these paid agitators were attacking people at the checkpoint. Because I think, and I know this actually in chatting with my Egyptian friends, is that the people of Egypt stand with Palestine. But it is the regime, it is the current Egyptian government that is so heavily complicit in normalizing relations with Israel and also partnering with Israel to maintain the blockade and the siege when this border between Egypt and Palestine, Gaza, is heavily controlled by Israel. This is something that Egypt allows, right? And this is also what we've seen is like Egypt has charged Palestinians who are fleeing genocide into Egypt. They've charged them thousands of dollars just to leave through the Egyptian Hala company, and those that are even medically evacuated, for example, and go into an Egyptian hospital. There are many reports of Palestinian evacuees for medical reasons receiving extremely substandard care in these Egyptian hospitals, and there's also many examples of how the tens of thousands of Palestinians who are in Egypt, are in Cairo, do not have status, do not have the ability to have documents, to be able to work, to go to school. And on top of that, we know that there are tens of thousands of political prisoners in Egyptian jails, including people who have, including young people and students who have simply wanted to do some kind of demonstration, some kind of organizing in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And what they've experienced is extreme repression because of the complicity of the Egyptian regime and the current government in Israel's crimes and maintaining that existing status quo of apartheid and occupation and now ongoing genocide for 20 months.
Yes, it bears mentioning that several years ago, Human Rights Watch, which is based in the United States, put out a detailed report accusing this regime, the Sisi regime, of operating what it described as a torture assembly line in Egypt. So it is one of the most, by all indications, brutal regimes in the world. And I think probably the only way you could suppress the overwhelming pro-Palestinian sentiment amongst the Egyptian population is by being sadistically oppressive, unfortunately. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today, Dr. G, and we'll continue to follow the amazing work you're doing in support of the Palestinian cause.
Thank you for having me.
And this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal on June 24th, 2025.